There are lunar eclipses, and then there are blood moons. The difference isn't just semantics. It's written in centuries of Salish warnings that we ignored until it was too late. When the moon turns red over the Cascade Range, something ancient wakes up. Something that views that crimson light as permission to cross boundaries that normally hold. My name is Katherine Skywater, and I'm a wilderness ranger for Mount Baker-Snoqualmie National Forest in Washington State. My grandfather was Lummi Salish, and he spent 40 years trying to get the Park Service to close certain areas during blood moons. They dismissed him as superstitious. Traditional stories, they said, cultural beliefs we respect but don't act on. Then October 2024 happened, and we learned exactly why the Salish avoided the high country when the moon bled red. The blood moon was scheduled for October 28th, a total lunar eclipse visible across the Pacific Northwest. Perfect viewing conditions, clear skies predicted, and thousands of people had already registered for backcountry permits to watch it from the mountains. My supervisor, Jim Chen, had approved camping throughout the Cascade Range despite my repeated warnings about the Salish traditions. "Kate, I respect your heritage," he'd said, "but we can't close 150 miles of wilderness based on folklore. We'd be sued for religious discrimination." "It's not folklore," I'd argued. "It's accumulated knowledge." My grandfather kept records going back to 1952. Every blood moon, people disappear in the Cascades. Not elsewhere, just here. The pattern is undeniable. Correlation isn't causation. People get lost in the mountains all the time. So the permits were approved, and I volunteered for emergency response duty, knowing in my gut we'd need it. The blood moon rose at 9:47 p.m. Pacific time. I was stationed at the Image Lake area, coordinates 48.2847 Degin to 21.0934 Digavos, elevation 6,000 feet. 53 registered campers were scattered across the high country within my patrol zone. The eclipse began beautifully, the moon darkening as Earth's shadow fell across it. Then that eerie copper-red glow as it entered totality. My radio crackled at 10:12 p.m. Base to all units, we're getting reports of unusual wildlife behavior. Multiple callers reporting deer and elk running downhill in panic. Predator activity suspected. I scanned the ridgeline with my night vision scope. Animals were fleeing, dozens of them crashing through the undergrowth in terror, not running from something, running toward the lowlands, away from the peaks, away from the blood moon. That's when I heard the drums, deep, resonant, rhythmic, not coming from any campsite, coming from higher up the mountain, from areas too steep and exposed for human access. The sound was primal, ancient, and it made my bones vibrate. My grandfather's words echoed in my memory. When the blood moon rises and you hear the drums, that's the Stiyaha calling their people to gather. They are the ones who refused to leave when the great transformation came. They stayed in the mountains, became part of the stone and ice. Most nights they sleep. But when the moon bleeds, they remember they were once human, and they hunger for what they lost. First distress call came at 10:23 p.m. "This is Campsite 7, Image Lake Trail. Something just took our tent. The whole tent with Sarah still inside. It got pulled into the trees. We heard her screaming, but we can't find—" Static, then silence. "Campsite 7, this is Ranger 5-2. What is your exact position?" I was already moving, pack secured, heading toward their registered location. More calls flooded in. "Campsite 12. There are people standing on the ridge line, but they're wrong. They're too tall, and they're not wearing clothes, and they're just standing there watching us." "Campsite 15. Jesus Christ, did you see that? Something just walked past our tent. It was huge. It had to be 8 feet tall." "Campsite 19. Help us. They're surrounding the camp. They keep making this sound like rocks grinding together. Please, God, please." The radio became chaos. Screams, pleas for help. Then one by one, the calls stopped. In 12 minutes, 53 registered campers went silent. I reached Campsite 7 at 10:47 p.m. The tent was gone. Not damaged. Gone. Like someone had plucked it up, tent poles and all. The ground where it had stood was compressed, showing the outline of a massive hand. 4 fingers, each one pressed 6 inches into the frozen earth. Blood trail, leading upslope toward the drumming. I followed it 50 yards before finding Sarah Chen's backpack, torn open, contents scattered. Then her boot, then her jacket, shredded, then nothing. The drumming got louder. I crested a ridge and saw them. They stood on a high plateau below the ridgeline, dozens of figures, maybe hundreds, silhouetted against the blood-red moon. Humanoid shapes, but wrong. Too tall, too broad, proportions that suggested something that had once been human, but had been reshaped by centuries in the mountains. Some were naked, their skin appearing gray and stone-like in the crimson light. Others wore animal hides stitched with impossible skill. All of them were motionless, facing the moon. And at their feet, arranged in careful patterns, were people, the campers. Some sitting, some standing, all perfectly still. Like the things on the plateau had positioned them, and they'd simply stopped. No struggling, no escape attempts. Just standing or sitting as directed, staring at nothing. One of the figures turned toward me. In the red moonlight, I saw its face, or what had been a face. The features were there, but stretched, elongated, with eye sockets too large and a mouth that extended too far back into the skull. It looked at me, and I heard my grandfather's voice in my head. If the Stiyaha look at you during the blood moon, don't meet their eyes. They see the humanity in you, and they remember what they lost. If you acknowledge them, they'll take you to show you what you'll become. I looked away, focused on my radio. Base, this is Ranger 5-2. I have visual on multiple missing persons at coordinates. I rattled them off. They appear to be detained by unknown entities. I count approximately 100 entities. Request immediate tactical response and medical evacuation for... The thing made a sound, not words. A deep vibration that I felt in my chest cavity, rattling my ribs. The meaning came anyway, bypassing language. Go. You are marked with the old blood. You may witness, but not interfere. This is our time, our moon, our right. Other figures began moving among the campers, touching them. Each person touched would stiffen, then relax, then follow the creature that had touched them, walking deeper into the mountains, up toward the glaciers, toward areas no human could survive. I backed away slowly, didn't run, didn't make sudden movements, just carefully retreated back down the trail, the drumming following me, the blood moon casting everything in that awful crimson light. At 11:34 p.m., the moon began to emerge from totality. The red faded, returning to normal silver gray. And like a switch had been thrown, the drum stopped. The temperature rose 10 degrees in minutes. Wildlife sounds returned, owls hooting, small animals rustling. Normal night noises. I reached the trailhead at 1:15 a.m. Search and rescue was already mobilizing. 30 personnel, helicopters, dogs, thermal imaging. We searched for a week, found campsite equipment, scattered belongings, but no people. 53 registered campers simply been gone. The official report listed it as a mass disappearance event of unknown origin. Possible flash flood despite clear weather. Possible animal attack despite no evidence. Possible cult abduction despite no suspects. The investigation is still open. But I filed a second report, the one that goes to the Salish cultural liaison, the one that only rangers with tribal connections see. I described everything, the Stiyaha, the gathering, the moon's permission, the touching and taking. I described how they looked at the people not with hunger but with longing, how they'd arranged them carefully, almost lovingly, before leading them away. They're building their numbers, the tribal elder told me when I showed him my report. Every blood moon they take some, not to kill, to transform, to make them into Stiyaha like they are, caught between human and mountain, flesh and stone. Your grandfather tried to warn them. He had proof going back 70 years. I pulled the historical data. Blood moons over the Cascade Range, 1952, 1967, 1982, 1985, 2000, 2003, 2007, 2014, 2015, 2018, 22, and now 24. Every single one had corresponding missing persons reports. Not just one or two, dozens, all in the high country, all disappeared completely. The pattern wasn't just undeniable, it was mathematical. Blood moon plus Cascade Range equals missing people who are never found. Here's what haunts me most. 3 weeks after the blood moon, I was doing a routine patrol near Hannigan Peak. Found a campsite that shouldn't exist. No fire scar, no impact, just a cleared area with some equipment laid out in precise patterns. And standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me but not approaching, was Sarah Chen, or what had been Sarah Chen. Her skin had a grayish cast. Her proportions were slightly wrong, spine too straight, limbs too long. And when she saw me looking, she made a sound like rocks grinding together and vanished into the forest with impossible speed. She's one of them now. All 53 of them are. Somewhere up in the high peaks, learning to be Stiyaha, learning to wait for the next blood moon when they'll help gather more. The next blood moon visible over the Cascade Range is scheduled for April 2025. I've submitted multiple reports recommending closure of the high country during the eclipse. They've all been denied. Insufficient evidence, they say. Can't base policy on unverified claims. So the permits are already being issued. Thousands of people planning to camp in the mountains to watch the moon turn red. And when it does, the drums will start again. The Stiyaha will gather, and more people will follow them up into the peaks, into the glaciers, into the places where human and mountain blur together until you can't remember which you were or why you ever wanted to be anything else. My grandfather spent 40 years trying to protect people from the blood moon. I've been trying for 8 months. So far, neither of us has succeeded. If you plan to visit the Cascade Range, check the lunar calendar. If a total eclipse is scheduled, stay away from the high country. Camp in the lowlands. Watch from the valleys. Don't go above the tree line. Because the Salish warnings exist for a reason. And every blood moon, we learn that reason again at terrible cost. Stay out of the Cascade Range during the blood moon, unless you want to stay there forever.